Right. Hello, everybody. How is everybody doing today? Good. Awesome. Hope everybody is doing good, whether you are here or at home. Thank you for tuning in. So welcome to today's topic. And my topic today is talking about how games, I believe, can inspire civic change. But before we get into that, let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Jordan Sparks. I'm a multimedia artist, designer, and educator. That is a long-winded way of saying that I do a lot of different things. I do graphic design, I do video, I do animation, I do interactive media such as games. I'm an expert in structured in games for social change, and I talk about it a lot and make games for social change a lot. And some people call me the friendly neighborhood Sparky Man. I graduated from Toronto Metropolitan University with a Master of Arts in Media Production, as well as a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Media. And I am the president of Shining Spark Entertainment. I've worked all over the place. I've done a lot of things. I'm a professor at Humber College. I am the director of technology at the Hand-Eye Society, and I've worked in many different places, such as the Royal Ontario Museum, TSN, done a whole lot of freelance stuff for clients, and a whole bunch else. But that's a bit of the gist of me, and just a preview of just some of the stuff I do. I do a whole lot of different things, as I said. But enough about me. Before we get started, I know we just did a land acknowledgement, but I just would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Suckers of Credit, and other peoples who have lived on and cared for this land since time immemorial. I know I'm missing some of them, but there are so many. Today, this land is still home to many diverse indigenous peoples, and we all have our own relationships to the land, and we are grateful to have this opportunity to be part of this territory and be here talking about all this stuff today. So without further ado, let's have some fun and get our game on. So I'm going to start with saying that our world is in danger. Don't panic. Our world is in danger for many different reasons, and there's many different things that are in danger. There is war, there's healthcare problems, there's issues in education, there's stuff around housing and food, all these different things and many others, which all have one major thing in common, and that thing is politics. Politics is ever-reaching. It affects everything. It has all sorts of different effects on everything that we do, everything that we have, and the opportunities that we are able to pursue. And that is an issue because we have a little bit of a problem. Politicians are the people who are supposed to be making all of those decisions that are supposed to affect us and all our opportunities and all other things. But the issue is that nobody votes. As I'm sure many of us know, there's a lot of issues with voter turnout. Not a lot of people vote. Voter turnout is going way, way down for not just in Canada, but all around the world. And that is a major problem because politics is so integral to how we do things, how we live our lives, where we can live, all the opportunities that we have. Politics is at the center of this, and yet, nobody votes. But why don't people vote? Oh, you're good. Okay. It says unmute your microphone.
We can hear you. It's all good.
Oh, we're all good?
Yeah, if you will just close that.
So, why don't people vote? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. There is a lack of civic literacy. Nobody really seems to know what's going on, and that is a big problem. We have a perception of nonstop corruption. Nothing that we do matters. That is a big problem. There's lack of transparency. There's a lot of political apathy. All sorts of different things, including the fact that politics is not accessible at all. It is very, very inaccessible. Jargon is really advanced. Nobody really knows what anybody's talking about at any time. Even people sometimes who know about politics a lot. There's just so much dimension to it, and there's just so much to it. But there's also a lot of misinformation, and that makes things frustrating. It becomes basically impossible to figure out what's going on. And that can cause people to no longer be able to relate to current events. And that makes it a bit of a problem because if politics is at the center of everything in our society, how can we as a society make good decisions if we can't relate to anything that's going on? Can't talk politics is a dirty word. It's very much a thing that people can't or don't know how to discuss because nobody knows what it means or what it does. And a lack of voters equals a weaker democracy, which, as I'm sure we can see now in our society, leads to a whole bunch of endless problems. That's potential problems that we are just seeing the sum of it now. And these statistics are very much in favor of that view because there's all sorts of different voter turnout rates all over the world that are dropping. I have a whole bunch of statistics here about how all of these places in the world, Canada, UK, USA, all these things show that voter turnout is going way down, and is still going way down. And the question is, what should we do about that? And my question is, well, have you tried art? Because art is something that is really important to as a society, but also it's the fact that people don't necessarily relate to numbers. People do not relate to statistics. People do not relate to things when we tell them that this percent is happening, or this people think of this percent of people think of this. People don't relate to that. And that is why we cannot really seem to connect other people into voting or being civically minded or caring about anything that's going on. Because, for example, I'm sure many of us are civically minded here, but the average person is not. And when we see all sorts of different things in civics through art. For example, we see history through arts and through old paintings and stuff like that. And those indicate a lot of political issues in those paintings that we sometimes don't realize it. We see all sorts of expressions of things that are going on through art, such as the photography of the Vietnam War, which show people how bad that war was. We see comedy and media in arts that tells us all about things that are going on in the world and trying to make light of it, informing people through laughter. We have politics that are sometimes seen through different forms of modern art. We see different forms of current events that are being represented in art, such as this thing from Banksy, where now the nurses and the healthcare workers are superheroes during the height of the pandemic. And even sometimes I make some art that show how I see it. But when it comes to how we relate to things that are going on, we see the world through art, and we understand things and feel things through art. Because I could tell you until I'm blue in the face what the 2022 Toronto mayoral election turnout is from last summer that we have to now redo next week. I can tell you that the voter turnout was this, and this percent of people voted for this person, this person voted for this person, and nobody will relate to that. We do not relate to numbers very well. I know I don't. If you tell me that if I go get a donut and it's going to have a 1 in 36 chance of killing me, I'm just going to say, so I'm going to die. I don't have a good relation to numbers, and a lot of people don't. But if I say, for example, show you a nice little chart that shows you just how messed up it was, and how many people just did not vote, well, now people can relate to that a little bit easier. There's something visual there that I can latch onto. And through a little colorful pie chart, you can more relate to what is going on, how the statistics actually work, and what exactly they mean. I know. I'm sure many of you all voted, but that's just a figurative thing. But that is essentially the turnout for the last election. This is the sun, everybody. Welcome. And so, what exactly do we do about that? Well, I was thinking about that long and hard, and I decided that there was a way that we can try and level up how we get people involved in politics. And my answer was this. So that was the game which currently has a full title yet, but we currently call it Theopoly. And that is a video game that I'm creating and releasing this summer that is about politics, how people relate to politics, and how it affects us and those around us. And to that point, Theopoly is a 3D point-and-click visual novel game. For those of you who are not necessarily games people, it essentially is like an interactive book. It's an interactive book with a bunch of things going on. Who here, by the way, is a game player? Anybody? Okay, cool. All right, some good, some are, some aren't. That's fine. In Theopoly, players are thrust into a sudden election season, not as a politician, but as a citizen and marketing executive. There are many games that try to make you the god or the leader or the decision maker of a country or a nation or a bunch of people. But what happens to those other people? Just the regular people? How are they affected by all the stuff that's going on? In this game, we get to explore that through all these different viewpoints and characters, and we'll see how the election, the politics, the actions of politicians affect them and the thoughts of other people. And through Pen, it's really great if you aren't a game player because it is built to be accessible to anybody. So it doesn't matter if you are a person who plays a lot of games, a person who doesn't play a lot of games, it's designed with you in mind. It's a very simple point-and-click game where all you need to do is know how to left-click and right-click. That's all you need to do in order to play that game. And explore all sorts of different things that are going on. It is a very colorful and comic-inspired game with very comedic characters and writing that showcases all sorts of different things that are politically related in an 8-chapter story. And this game is being developed by the diverse team and I at Shining Spark Entertainment, that includes me as well as my colleagues down there who all played a very important part in the development of this game. But the thing about Theopoly is, though, it's not about the politicians, even though that they are a big part of the narrative. These politicians are from left to right. There is Finn Morris, who is the conservative, or in this case, because we didn't want to get sued, we renamed all the parties. So the conservatives are named the Blueberry Party. Next is Lenin Lavoie, who is the liberal or the tomato leader, and then there's Sarah Sacco, who is the orange leader. I'm sure you can tell that's meant to be the MVP. We have Barbara Chin, who is the Green Party leader, which we call the zucchinis, as well as Leisure Mask, who is the head of the Bagel Québécois. So all the parties are renamed to foods, but it's not necessarily about that, even though they are a big part of the narrative. It's all their actions do affect people as well as their promises, and it's really about the people who are just trying to live their lives. How do all the things that those politicians do or want to do affect those characters and everybody else in the world? That's what the game is truly about. But it has a lot of challenges, this conception, because how do I make people want to vote? The entire idea is to help people understand what's going on and inspire them to vote. How do you make somebody care that is politically relevant? How do you help people understand current events? How do you make politics not so intimidating as it currently is, and it's very hard to get into because of jargon and all these other high-level concepts that feel beyond us minorities. How do we make politics considered relatable and not depressing? Because it often is. And how do we make it appealing and accessible to non-gamers? People who don't necessarily play a lot of games, how do we make it accessible as well as appealing to them and ensure that everybody can play this game and understand what's going on? And so we came at those challenges head on, and it had a long road. Back when I showed this game originally in 2019 here at Cinetech Toronto, it actually had a different form. It looks a lot like this. So I'm sure you can see it has had a lot of evolution since. But the idea behind answering all those questions was to make a game with colorful characters, with all sorts of relatable situations, with accessible controls and things that people can imagine themselves in, situations that they can imagine, yeah, I've been in a similar situation like this, or in a similar situation like this, or I've seen this. What do I actually think about this? And critically think about that issue and what exactly does that mean in relation to the rest of the game, the world, the country, and what would I do in this situation? And so we have these many different relatable situations for players to go into many different topics. And of course, because we don't want it to be too stressful a lot of time, we even have just a bunch of stuff that's just really silly, like Chatbot over here, with a little Muppet who teaches you how to cook. So it's not all doom and gloom. We wanted to make sure, in order to make sure that it's not a depressing game, it's not something that's inaccessible, not something that people want to shy away from because politics is not something anybody wants to get involved with anymore. It's fun, it's charming, it's colorful, it's not as dreary as people imagine politics currently being right now. And we wanted to get that across through the design of our game, both visually and mechanically. Our goals for this game are to combat political apathy and discrimination through increasing civic literacy all throughout Canada. We wanted to especially target the young demographic because 18 to 24 demographic are the lowest voting demographic. We wanted them to have something that appeal to that demographic and others in order for people to get into politics and be willing to try and learn about this in a passionate and accessible and nonpartisan way. We also want to try and lower the barriers to civic education because the barriers to civic education are really big right now. We only have, I believe, one province, which is in Ontario, that actually has an mandatory civics course. It is half a semester for high school students. It is not enough time for people to actually understand what's going on. And for the rest of the country, they may not have that. We wanted a way to contribute to civic education and potentially be something that is a companion to civic education through a game like this, and potentially put it in schools as well as sell publicly on online platforms such as Steam. And we wanted to help inspire further social change in the industry because I feel like I'm one of the people who is really, really focused on that. I wanted to inspire more people to make things about different issues, to help us understand what's going on interactively through games and helping us understand different perspectives, different issues, and learn all about the world. And our overall goal, I just realized. And then our overall goal, though, is that we want to create a more civically minded public through video games. And I'm sure that this sounds really cute to some people, but some of you might be asking, why video games? Of all things, why would you make a video game about that? And my personal question is, why not video games? But I'd like to read a small quote from, I'd like to read a small quote from a book called Video Game Art that I think is really important to understanding where I'm coming from, which is that there is some fundamental need to experience a story, even when we would be compelled without one, because they allow us through interactivity to become that entity rather than observing him or her. Video games are the ultimate realization of the fundamental need for a human need for mythologies. And the reason I want to talk about that is because as human beings, we need myth, we need story. We pass on all sorts of different things through story, even if we don't necessarily realize it. Whether it's the stories we are told as a child, or the stories we tell our friends about what we ate last week. We have all sorts of different types of story and mythologies that we pass along. We can see it in sports where we have different types of mythologies around different players. We can see it in even politics when they have the rivalries between different politicians. We build a story for people to latch onto and relate to. And we can see that in many different ways. We see that in the fairy tales that we are told as children, and we learn lessons from them. We see it in the superheroes that we consume today in all sorts of different media about what it means to be a hero. We see it in the games that we are playing, where we try to be part of this grand story. And this grand story, and affect different things. But the main reason why I think games are just so powerful as a medium and a way that we can start learning about civics through a interesting and well-designed experience that's based especially on that, is that when we play games, we embody everything that's going on. When we play a game like Mario, for example, we don't say that Mario jumped. We say I jumped, even though that we are sitting on our chairs and not actually doing any jumping. We embody that character. When we play a game and we are fighting, we kill a dragon, we don't say that character killed the dragon, we say I killed that dragon. We embody everything that happens in games, because when it comes to games, we drive the story. We take ownership of our actions. We embody our virtual avatars and we invest in our immersion. And games are often thought of as kid stuff, but I assure you they are not, because games are very complex and they can help us explore different types of stories, different types of parables, different types of worlds. We can learn about culture, context, and all sorts of different other things and explore that and how that affects us personally or just mentally through games. And games have a lot of things that go into them. They are, as I often tell my students, a fusion of many different fields: science, art, academia, tech, and all these other things. All these things go into making games, and they are very complex when it comes to how they are made. But we can see how games can teach us about all sorts of different things, all sorts of different types, through all sorts of different types of ways. We see, for example, the Assassin's Creed games, which, while they are historical fiction, most of the events and characters are based on actual history and historical events and historical figures. And you can actually learn a lot of history through those games. And in fact, they even made a special version of that game that is just essentially a museum of all the research they did about those particular eras. It's just not so you kill anything, but that you actually just get to look through those different types of artifacts and learn about them. There's games that can teach us about a little bit about law, such as Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, which plays a little loosely on how law actually works, but you can learn actually a few things about law and legal stuff through those types of games, such as when they're describing what double jeopardy is. You can learn how to cook through games. Games can pass along how to cook and different types of recipes. And even if we're not even talking about video games, we can look at different types of board games, such as chess, which, if you didn't know, has like a several thousand-year history of how it used to start as a game that originated from India, came to all sorts of different types of cultures, and was essentially remixed several times until it became the chess we know today. Games have a lot of history and values, and they express a lot of different things, both historically and culturally, that I think a lot of people do ignore and don't necessarily appreciate sometimes. And that leads me to talk about how they can affect us and our understanding of the world through my research on Games for Social Change. And Games for Social Change is a special thing that I research and do, and I got a master's in it. But essentially, Games for Social Change are games that aim to inform, enlighten, and/or affect the thoughts, opinions, and beliefs towards certain social and cultural issues in society. Wow, that's a mouthful. But that is the academic version I had to come up with for my thesis. But in layman's terms, essentially, they are games that sort of express meaning through different types of interactive systems, mechanics, and stories that they can tell, where the player is the one who drives everything that's going on, where the player starts making those decisions. And it can help them relate to different types of issues that are going on in our society. They also tend to need to be very well researched, because if you are going to express something and say that is true, you want to make sure you're actually right and you write by your source material. I researched Games for Social Change very heavily. I've made several games in this field, and I've also built my own company, Shining Spark Entertainment, around the principle of designing different types of multimedia for social change in many sort of innovative ways. So I wanted to essentially make a company that is specifically around this principle of making multimedia for social change, be it games or other types of media, so that we can help people understand that media is not necessarily just something that can only just be for fun. You know, making media for fun is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But entertainment has a wide spectrum of feeling. And there's all sorts of different things that games and other media can make us feel. And when it comes to games, they are not often thought about in that way. They are often seen as essentially toys sometimes. But what I ask is that when you think of games and you think of other media, a romance novel can touch your heart. A horror movie can scare you. A documentary can teach you something about the world. Why can't we think about games in that sort of same way? And through my efforts with this, I like to experiment with that question and start making games for social change that try to help us learn about the world and other perspectives. And when designing games for social change, I ask myself a lot of different types of questions. What issues do you think are plaguing society and why? What type of change would you like to provoke? How can interactivity give a new insight into an issue? What could this game and this content teach us about ourselves? What kind of research must you perform to make this happen? And I emphasize this one especially because a lot of people, especially in games, like to play fast and loose research. And to me, I believe that research is the backbone of any great project. And if you're going to represent something, especially if you want people to care about it, you want to try and do it as accurately as possible, or else you're doing a disservice to what you're doing. And what does your work represent? And how does it represent those things? And a lot of people, when I start telling them about this, they ask, okay, so I get all that. Why would you put politics in games? Because that's the thing everybody hates these days, right? Why? You don't put politics in games, that's what people say. And my answer to that is that politics have always been part of our games. And sometimes we just don't seem to notice. Be it in a game like Pokemon, where, oh, I can go anywhere and there's free healthcare. That's a political decision. They design an entire, as a Japanese game, they design an entire world where you can just go get all your Pokemon healed for free. If you design this game in the US, you might get a different perspective on that. But also, we see that games express different types of political systems and political ideologies and just political statuses in many different ways, be it through this game, be it through a game where you have to go save the princess, you have to save the monarch, that's a political figure, or games which don't necessarily do this very well, which is, Call of Duty, where they're like, yeah, let's point a gun at people to de-escalate the situation. That will do something really great, which is a very controversial, let's just say, sort of flex. But the thing is, though, that these games all express something, even if sometimes we don't necessarily realize it, through their systems, through their story, through their mechanics, through all the different things that are featured into the game. And even though it's like some people insist that certain things are not political, well, could these political things or just person walking down the street happen in a free democratic society? Well, yes, well, there we go. And all sorts of different things around the world are affected, around the game world are affected by politics that affect how you can view things, the story of what's going on and everything that is happening in games and express all sorts of different things. There's a lot of people who say that keep politics out of games. They always have been there and they still are. And they teach us all sorts of different things, such as different types of culture, different types of skills, different types of systems, values, social orders, and sometimes it works out really good, and sometimes it works out really bad. It's not exactly, it's a bit of a contentious issue, and sometimes people don't necessarily take a lot of responsibility in how they depict certain things and the different types of things that they are expressing through games. But I try to tell people to take ownership of everything that you express in games. Be mindful of how people might perceive certain things in order to get the effect that you really want on people and show them different types of perspectives or tell different types of stories. Because interactivity is really, really powerful and it can allow us to show all sorts of different types of interesting stories. And these are just some examples of just interesting interactive games, which there's way more than I had time to really put, or the space to put in a presentation. But these are just some games that just about different experiences, such as being a housekeeper in Sunset, or a game that could teach us about loneliness, which is on the top right. Games that could teach us about what it's like for parents to go through the experience of a child dying with cancer. What experience of being an immigration officers and papers, please, or a experience of a child dealing with their parents' alcoholism and who thinks of it as a monster in Papa and Yo. There's all sorts of different ways that through interactivity that you can creatively showcase different types of values, meanings, etc. And people are not necessarily thinking about that all the time. They think of games as toys. And I'm here to tell you that it can't be further from the truth. There's all sorts of ways that we can engage people and make people civically minded through games and everything that we represent within them. And I think that it's something that people should consider more. So nothing is just a game, and every game has meaning and values. So let's use them to change the world. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope that this has opened your eyes in terms of making you think about what types of games what types of political or civic content you think are in games, or even maybe you want to make a game yourself about anything that you really want to. If you want to check in the stuff that I do, there's my stuff right there. Additionally, there is a link to my website for Shining Spark Entertainment, and where is a place you can follow me on that. There's a QR code if you want to be notified of anything that we are doing, including the release date for Preopoly, which is going to be sometime probably next month. Then you can sign up for our newsletter, which is you can access through the QR code there on your phones. And if you have any questions, I'm all ears. Feel free to ask me any questions. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. And when Preopoly comes out, you are here to try it. Thank you so much.